I come from a family of entrepreneurs, but I'll tell you the funny thing that goes with that. My father was an engineer and my mother was a doctor, and they were entrepreneurs and engineers and doctors.
Can you talk more about that? Like, how did that come together? How did you think about that? What does the experience look like?
It was extremely chaotic. I think we went through a fairly difficult 12 months. As an entrepreneur, you cannot be married to an idea or be fixed on a particular thought. I've always, thought about doing something, but never did. I mean, I have a whole book of ideas.
Why do you think it's been a slow comeback?
I couldn't run. Like they say, every downturn or every recession is an opportunity to build something great. Change was just always the most constant part of my life.
You're building a travel-specific content in virtual reality space.
You never have to look outside. Our goal is, at the end of the day, can we become the operating system for global work? That's where we want to get to. Where you are doesn't matter. All of us became remote overnight. We don't necessarily always need to be sitting in the same room, and this model works.
How does this affect you as a talent hiring company?
And I'll be honest, we're not immune to what's happening around the world. You know that an event like this can kill your business.
Hey everyone, welcome to a new episode of the AI Business Show. The show where you learn about business, tech, entrepreneurship, startups, investing, and anything related to business. Today with me I have Vikram. He's in the tech world, started many ventures, including something in the travel world, hiring. We're gonna get deep into each of them, and we're gonna learn more who Vikram is. Vikram, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much, Ahmed. Really nice to be here.
Uh, Vikram, you say that you're an entrepreneur for life at the intersection of art, tech, and business. What does this mean?
Yeah, so I'll give you a quick background. I've been an entrepreneur for the last 13 years. Prior to that, did a whole bunch of things. Worked in consulting for many years, both tech and management consulting, and so on and so forth. But really got bitten by the entrepreneurial bug about 13 years ago, and realized that I just absolutely loved building things from scratch. So in many ways, that's something that I've sort of pursued and followed since then. And for me, I think the idea of, building a business aligns very closely with creating something that I'm passionate about. And I've always been passionate about technology and the impact that it can have in terms of just really solving problems at scale. But I'm also a very creative person, and I like to think that I'm excited by, art and anything to do with communities and people. So for me, anything that kind of combines people, communities, technology is sort of like the perfect melting pot of something that gets me excited, right? So largely everything that I've done until now tries to eventually, I try to eventually get it down into that intersection of being able to tick off all three boxes. Sometimes it's a bit harder to do, but eventually we get there.
Okay. What was your first attempt at entrepreneurship? At what age did you was it when you were in high school? Was it when you were in college? When did you have your first attempt at entrepreneurship?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. I come from a family of entrepreneurs. So my parents and extended family, everyone's been an entrepreneur. So I've always seen close family building businesses, and I've always assumed that that's what you do after a certain time in your career. I'd say the first business that apart from the ones that I did when I was younger, I think the first business that I really did was much later. I think I only dived in head first in a more serious sort of setting where we set out to build an e-commerce company in the Middle East all the way back in 2010-ish. But prior to that, I've always, thought about doing something, but never did. But I think once that happened, I made up for some lost time and ended up experimenting with a lot of different ventures since then until now.
It's funny how you mentioned that your family is you come from a family of entrepreneurs. I had Mashal Wakar with me on the pod earlier, and most of the time when you're Middle Eastern or you come from like India or Pakistan or the region, your family wants you to either be a doctor, lawyer,
Yeah.
or engineer. That's the three options you're going for. It's funny you come like it's fun that you come from a family of entrepreneurs. This way, it gives you more kind of segue, or you could go that path if you wanted to.
Yeah, but I'll tell you the funny thing that goes with that. My father was an engineer, and my mother was a doctor, and they were entrepreneurs as engineers and doctors. So, so I had it hard from all. I couldn't run.
That's perfect. You have a passion for travel. Where did that passion come from?
Yeah, and again, attributed to a lot of my growing up years. When I was younger, both my parents were in the Indian Navy, so we traveled a lot. And
Okay.
so when I was, a kid, I think I did something like 9 schools, and every
Oh
year
wow.
and a half, 2 years, we moved around to a different city. So I think just this idea of being on the move and just being exposed to different cultures and and people and for me, food, for example, was just a part of my life growing up, and I think it's just something that I've held on to. And then growing up, I was just fascinated by anything related to travel, whether that's comic books or TV shows, and so this just intense curiosity for knowing what a particular place is like, what people in that place do, what they eat, how they live, is just something that I've always sort of held very close. And I've been very fortunate to have the opportunity to travel for work, with friends, with family. So there's always been some travel that sort of, come up in life. And I was also very fortunate later in life to be able to build a business with it. So yeah,
Right.
it's a constant theme in my life. And today we have young kids, but ever since they've been born, we've been on the road with them. So we're hoping that they grow up to be, little travelers as well.
Uh, how do you think you were traveling every 2 years, different cultures, different countries. How do you think this traveling and this uh, integrating with different cultures shape you as an entrepreneur?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think personally for me, you know, one of the standout characteristics that I've seen about successful entrepreneurs is being okay with impermanence and being okay with change, whether that's changing business model, changing ideas, changing your opinions, and as an entrepreneur, you cannot be married to an idea or be fixed on a particular thought. Chances are you never really know enough about everything to be able to be, so strong in your convictions. For me, the idea of growing up in different environments meant that I was just never really able to get used to being in one place and one setting. And, change was just always the most constant part of my life. And I
Right.
think in some ways, that has impacted my thinking and how I function both professionally and personally, which is I'm okay to change. I'm never
Okay.
really holding on to something and being stubborn about it. And I'm okay to see another point of view and move along with it if I find that it's more agreeable or amenable with what I want to achieve. So for me, I think just that adaptability and flexibility is something that comes across or comes along with having been brought up in such an environment.
And I think that's an important character of an entrepreneur or a business starter or anyone who works in the startups ecosystem. Startups tend to change. They tend to start in one way, change directions depending on what customer feedback they get. And it's important to be able to adapt to that change and be okay with it. Uh, you started Beyond Travel. Before you started it, what gaps did you see in the market that made you want to start it? Like when you were looking at the market, at the industry, what did you see? What pain points did you see that people had before you started Beyond Travel?
Yeah, so I'd always been the startup that I did before Beyond, we had basically built a like a daily deals sort of discounted e-commerce company where travel was a big part of that. And
Okay.
one of the things that we noticed was that, people were always interested in consuming travel. And then we started another company where our investors wanted to build a very similar business, which was mass market, just focus on selling the same product, sell them at high velocity. And for some reason, I was very disillusioned by the idea of selling travel as a commodity. For me personally, at least, travel was more of an experience. It was about being able to do something that you're not going to do in your daily life, and walking away with one or two things that you will remember for the rest of your lifetime, right? It's not really about which hotel you stay in or
Right.
what you see. For me, it was always about what you do. So the opportunity really was on building on this notion of experiential travel, which today is a very overly used word, but back then I think as a concept it was still evolving. And what we wanted to do then is figure out, as why do people travel, right? And one of the things that came out of it is people travel because they want to feel accepted, they want to feel integrated, they want to feel like they're experiencing something that's out of their comfort zone. And the segment of the niche that we landed onto was the fact that a lot of people, when they travel to pursue some sort of interest or passion. It could be food,
Okay.
it could be culture, it could be art, it could be sport, it could be outdoors, you name it. But very often travel is not necessarily offered catering to those interests. And so what we wanted to do is allow people to travel to pursue interests. And we realized that experiences only get magnified when you're traveling with someone else who appreciates those as much as you do. So could we combine the two? And the idea was then, can we facilitate community-based travel where you travel with people like yourselves that have similar interests and passions, and you're out to achieve a similar purpose, right? And that was really the starting point. And then over the years, we launched multiple community segments. So we did a lot of work within, women-only travel. We did outdoor, we did health and wellness, yoga retreats. We did travel for the 65 plus. We did travel for the less than 35. We did travel for families with kids. We did travel for, singles only. And the idea really was, if there is a need for you to belong or to feel or to experience, then, we're going to give you a support structure or a community that just amplifies that experience. So that was eventually the model. And we took a bet on the fact that people were willing to travel with people they had never met before. And, that really sort of turned out to be true. We realized that there was an entire, particularly when you look at a market like India, or even if you look at, for example, the Middle East, there's a lot of people who are, first-time travelers or are travelers that are probably a bit more conservative in how they want to travel. For example, women-only travel is a huge segment. And for a lot of women who are traveling, they want to know that there's, comfort and safety that comes along with them traveling to a country that they've never been to. So being able to offer all of these things and do it in a manner where you're doing it alongside people that you know and trust, was a huge benefit. So we ended up launching about 15 to 18 different communities. We ended up traveling to more than, I think it was we had travel options close to about 80 odd countries at the end. There were about 20 odd thousand tours from, at the end, we had about 200 odd global operators who were working with us. And we had about 500,000 departures, which means any day of the, of the year, you could literally choose between, 20 to 50 departures per country, right? So it was a very, very widespread. And we saw a lot of uptake and a lot of interest in this model.
Okay. Let's dig deep kind of in what beyond travel is. You gave us the general, but I want to, if you could take me through like a customer journey or customer experience with beyond travel, like do I join a community first and then do I choose a country I want to travel to? Do I choose a country I want to travel to? Then I join a community. Can I travel by myself? Like take me through the details of the experience on beyond travel. I go on the website, what do I do?
Yeah, so your journey really begins with you wanting to travel. And within that, we will ask you then to give us preferences. What kind of travel do you enjoy? What are your passions? What are your interests? Where do you want to go? Do you want to travel in a small group? Do you want to travel in, a private group of your own friends? Are you a budget traveler? Do you like luxury? Do you like the outdoors? Are you someone who likes culture? Tell us a little bit about yourself. And once that's done, then we're able to sort of start to match you with different sort of travel experiences that might fit what you're looking for. We're not necessarily connecting you with people. That happens on the travel. It doesn't actually happen before or after.
Okay.
But what we would then do is say, great, you want to travel to South America. Here are a couple of options for you. You're an outdoor adventure type. This one is particularly interesting because it covers, does XYZ treks in Brazil and then ends up on a waterfall. And then you cross over and you're moving on to the next location. And it's 14 days and within your budget, right? So we can give you very precise, specific, tailored recommendations. Again, these are fixed departure products, which means, it starts on this day and ends on this day. You can, of course, customize it, but largely you're buying what's on offer. This is a group that's traveling already, and you can choose to join. So this was primarily the experience that we would do. But we also believed the fact that, travel was more than just, trying to find a package at a price. So we did do quite a bit outside of this to build community. So for example, we would run a storytelling series called the Lime Diaries, and Lime Diaries was all about travel storytelling. So it would be, we would host these events about once or twice a month, and then we would invite well-known speakers, sometimes celebrities, influencers, personalities across different fields to come and talk about their travel experiences. But the idea was really talk about that memorable experience that changed your life, right? And we noticed that these kind of events would really get people very excited, right? And started building up a lot of interest. So this was largely how it worked. Before the pandemic, just a year before that, we launched a product called Postpaid. And Postpaid was essentially a way to bring in subscription style purchase option in travel, which means rather than paying everything upfront, you could pay off your travel in monthly bits after you come back. And it would just be completely financed. You would have 0% interest, but you could just convert your travel into 12 or 36-month installments. And you don't have to go through a bank. So it doesn't do any of the bank, no credit card needed. So it's not, high interest. So that really, the idea with that was, for people who want to travel now, why should they wait until payday or wait for 6 more months, right? Really make it easy for them to access that convenience of financing. So we were working on a lot of these ideas, of course, and then, the pandemic kind of slowed us down a bit. And I personally also started working on Talent 500. So it took away a lot of that momentum. But but it's an exciting industry to be in for sure.
Right. A lot of questions over here. Let's start with this. If I want to travel me and let's say I'm married and I want to travel with my wife, can we do this travel alone without joining a group or is am I kind of, do I have to be part of this package?
No, you can absolutely customize it and say, hey, listen, I'd like to do exactly what they're doing, but I want to do it just me and my wife. And we would then be able to connect you with that travel operator wherever they are. And they have credibility because they offer a particular service and they have all these travelers who buy with them. So there's trust. You have some idea on what the price is. And usually, it would be cheaper than you doing it yourself because these companies buy in bulk. So they give you that economies of scale. And you have options to choose from. So you could say, look, me and my wife want to travel to Turkey, and she's an outdoor adventure type, while I like history and culture. And we'd be able to say, well, here are 2 options for you now, mix and match. Come up with exactly what you want, and we'll give it to one of our partners to make it, happen. So, you could absolutely customize it and do it as you want.
Okay. You mentioned that COVID slowed you down. Tell me more about the impact of COVID and what after COVID are we seeing trends going up on travel? What's happening after COVID and what happened during COVID?
Yeah, of course, the pandemic, like most other industries, caught everyone in the travel industry by surprise. What was unknown, though, was the period of recovery. Like many people, I assumed that this would be a 2-3 month, situation and we'd be back. But it was particularly hard because of the uncertainty. And what that meant as a business owner is, very hard for you to plan your business. I mean, of course, you've got fixed costs and salaries to pay and infrastructure bills, which keep adding up. And unfortunately, you've also got customers on the other side who are sitting on ready-made plans that you need to now give them, you need to give them some direction without really knowing what's going to happen. So it was extremely chaotic. I think we went through a fairly difficult 12 months of the pandemic, not knowing which way we're going to go. Should we ask our teams to take leave? Should we? So we did a whole bunch of things, and I have to say that I was very fortunate to have an extremely supportive and understanding team with me that really understood the situation, and our customers were very understanding as well. And the entire travel industry, I think, rallied together very strongly and supported each other. So
Okay.
of course, it's been hard. It's coming out slowly. I wouldn't say we're out of the woods yet. I would say that while there is this notion of revenge travel is definitely well and true, I think what's happened is that the infrastructure to support tourism hasn't quite ramped up yet. So what that
Right.
means is you have a lot of people potentially looking to travel, but flights are extremely expensive still, not operating at full capacity. Hotels have challenges with staff, so do flights. I mean, airports are a mess, as you can see.
Yes.
Popular tourism destinations are overcrowded, and you just generally have a lot of uncertainty happening with travel regulations and so on. Like, for example, visas to the US and Europe are a mess to get if you need visas today, right? I mean, long waiting times and so on and so forth. So I would say that travel is recovering slowly. Even though everybody wants to travel, I think the industry is, just trying to now find its way back. But, hopefully we make up for lost time. I think a lot of businesses need to earn back their livelihoods that they lost in the last couple of years. So hopefully
Right.
the industry bounces back well in the next year.
Why do you think it's been a slow comeback? Although we've been out of the pandemic almost, we could say for a year and a half now, we've been out of the pandemic. Why do you think it's a slow comeback in the travel industry?
Yeah, like I said, I think largely the infrastructure surrounding tourism hasn't
Okay.
quite gotten its act together. A lot of people were laid off during the pandemic or moved back home or took up other jobs. And now, as these industries want them to come back, these people don't want to come back. So I'll give you an example of the airline industry. This is a problem, throughout the world. There aren't enough pilots. There aren't enough ground crew. Airports are a mess. Planes are running, full, delayed, or sometimes so expensive that it makes no sense, right? And if you look at most tourism destinations as well, they're just not well staffed to handle just the mass rush that's coming in.
Okay.
So those are some of the challenges. And again, not to forget that there's, we're also in the middle of a crazy amount of geopolitical uncertainty
Yes.
with, wars and conflicts and all of these things. And these kind of things create in general a bit of uncertainty. Of course, economy is in a big mess in multiple countries around the world. Price of oil has gone up. Interest rates have gone up. People are happy keeping their money in the banks. Nobody really wants to spend. Economies are looking down, so people don't have that confidence in their income. So there's a lot going on, and travel
Okay.
is always a discretionary spend, which means the first thing to cut when you are feeling a bit uncertain.
Okay. Um, you mentioned that you allow your customers to pay post travel. How did this idea come through? How do you finance this travel? Because you're paying hotels, airlines, all of these. How are you and all the package they get? How are you managing to finance this before the customers pay? Where does the financing come from? If you could talk more about this.
Yeah, financing is a very interesting model for most industries. Typically, you have three parties involved. You have the buyer, you have the seller, and then you have a third party who's the financier, let's say. The responsibility of the buyer really is to ensure that they can secure financing, and then it's the responsibility of the person who's financing them to pay the seller. So as a seller, I get paid immediately. So there's no risk on my books. I will get the entire amount from the financier at the time of transaction. And then, it's between the person financing and the person buying to settle that over time. So it's a fairly low risk, high reward model for everybody involved, except unless, of course, you are doing your financing without due diligence and checks. The idea really came because, what we realized is that, and again, this is pre-pandemic, what we realized is that travel as a product always tended to be increasingly on the side of aspiration, right? People wanted to travel to exotic places, but these were always a question of, at some point I will do this. And it's
Okay.
about saving money or saving time or whatever that might be. And so we wanted to just solve that. We said, look, if you could do it right now, would you do it? Right? If you made it possible for you to do it right now in a very low risk, easy manner, would you do it? That's all it was. And I think it worked, right? Because I think people unanimously said yes. So
Okay, that makes sense. Um, you're building a travel specific content in virtual reality space. Is that true?
yeah, we did a lot
Yeah.
of work in virtual reality, or what's, I guess,
Okay.
the metaverse now, right?
Yes. Uh, can you talk more about that? Like, how did that come together? How did you think about that? What does the experience look like?
Yeah, absolutely. So this started in about 2018. I was selected by so Google ran a global program to identify filmmakers to create content in virtual reality. They called it the Daydream Impact Program, and I was one of the filmmakers selected for India at that time. And so, got access to a lot of this very cool equipment that Google was offering, and that really sort of opened my eyes to the enormous potential that immersive content, virtual reality, augmented reality could bring. With travel, it seemed like a very natural use case. We were often promoting destinations that were not being commonly sold. So we were taking people to Argentina and taking them to Jordan or taking them to Fiji. And these were places that people had seen in a book or maybe seen some show off, but these are not places that friends have been. So there was very little sort of, first-hand aspiration value coming out of it. What we wanted to do is create immersive content so that if somebody wanted to travel to Jordan, we would literally have them wear a headset and, they would be in Petra or they would be,
Okay.
walking on the Dead Sea. And it would be as simple as this, right? You get one of these
Oh, wow.
headsets, content is loaded, you put it on, and you're
Wow.
there, right? And
Okay.
so we built this out for quite a few destinations actually. At one point, I think we were the largest content creator for travel in virtual reality or in 360 video, actually, not virtual reality. What we then started doing is started working with tourism boards who wanted to use this as a way to further sell their destinations when, selling it to B2B travel agents and the likes. So it then
Okay.
became an interesting training module, right? Where a Jordan tourism board would sit with, hundreds of travel agents and get them to really understand how to sell Petra or to sell the Dead Sea or to sell, whatever it is that they were trying to really highlight as the experience, right? And so there were a lot of interesting use cases. And we spent quite a bit of time building it out. In fact, a lot of that content still exists. Of course, we at some point, I started a separate company called Parallel XR to actually focus on doing VR. And we did
Okay.
very different work in VR, working in retail with the likes of Amazon and such, which is a completely different initiative. And spent a lot of time really sort of doing that. And then we wound that company down as well. But I'm very excited about the potential of immersive content and technology.
Okay. Is Beyond Travel profitable, or did you take VC funding, or are you running it bootstrap?
No, so, before the pandemic, it was completely bootstrapped. We never really
Okay.
raised money for it. Part of it was, I think, just wanted to have the freedom to run the business a certain way. And we found that we were not necessarily building in a space which was interesting for VCs in the sense that we weren't aiming for scale. It was a very, we focused on a particular segment and we knew exactly what value we offered them. And
Right.
we had no intention to become a $1 billion company. This was intended to be a company that always, wanted to serve a particular purpose. So we built it as a bootstrap business and got it to some level of scale. It was profitable at a transaction level. Of course, we would keep investing back into the business and
Okay.
building some very cool tech
Yeah.
like the one that I just showed you
Yes.
around VR and such. So it was a business that generated good amount of money that allowed us to invest back.
Right. I think this virtual reality thing is mind-blowing. I could I haven't looked at many travel agencies or travel websites, but I could say that you're one of the unique ones that has this cool thing going on. So congratulations on that. I'm fascinated by
Thanks.
this. Really.
Thanks.
Uh, we spoke about the travel industry and beyond travel. Let's jump a little bit into talent. And the way I want to get this segue is you speak about community with travel. With future of work, we're gonna see more online communities in terms of work. Uh, what is Talent 500?
Yeah, sure. So Talent 500, what we do is help businesses with building and managing global teams. And what that means is we help companies with discovering top talent in global locations, and then we help them through the entire process of, selection, hiring, and onboarding employees in these markets so that they can build better teams to serve their end needs. Um, so there's a couple of reasons why we exist or why we're doing what we're doing, right? One is today every company is becoming a technology company. Technology is at the heart of everything that you do, and you need access to experience and expertise in technology to get you to that next stage. Whether that's a large company like Walmart or an early stage startup, today everybody needs to have differentiator, and that differentiator is in smart use of tech. So that's number one. The second thing is that there is a huge imbalance of talent and access to opportunity around the world. So you've got today, most of these, valuable businesses that have been built in the West historically. Of course, that's changing, but historically, a lot of valuable businesses have been built in the West. But the majority of talent today is in markets where they don't necessarily always have access to the same amount of opportunities, right? So whether that's, whether you look at South America, you look at the Middle East, you look at places like India, or you look at South Asia like Philippines or Vietnam or such, you have lots of emerging talent hubs that have tremendous talent, and that opportunity doesn't exist. So if you were to sort of combine one and two, companies need good talent is everywhere. So the obvious answer is, why don't companies build teams where the talent is? And that is where the big problem is. It is an extremely complex problem to solve. To be able to build a global team, you need to understand, local nuances of labor laws and your compliances, and you need to understand where talent is locally, and to be able to attract them in a manner that appeals to them. You need to have some sort of local on-ground presence to be able to, run through a process and then onboard and select and hire people, and potentially need a legal entity to make all of this happen, right? So many moving parts. It's expensive, it's time consuming, it takes a lot of know-how and expertise, and that's why companies don't do it. If there's one thing that the pandemic taught us, it's that we're in an era of a location independent workforce. Where you are doesn't matter. All of us became remote overnight, and today we work over Zoom and Slack,
Wow.
and we don't necessarily always need to be sitting in the same room, and this model works. And so what we're trying to do is really now make it easy for businesses to set up and manage global teams with their own employees in talent rich hubs, and give them the entire suite of tools to help make this possible, right? So that's essentially what we do. On the other side, what we're also doing is building a community of professionals that have global aspirations, that want to further their careers and work for some of the world's best companies, and have the right kind of skills to bring to the table. So exciting times. We just onboarded our 1 millionth profile on the
Wow.
talent marketplace last week. So it's a big milestone. And yeah, that's essentially about us at Talent 500.
Okay. Uh, let's deep dive and speak about each part of the market. You mentioned all this legal process, or the process for hiring. Do you work on any of this?
Yeah, so if you think about the journey of a business that's looking to set up a global team, the first thing you need to do is understand, where should I be? Which country should I be in? What markets are the right kind of
Okay.
skills? How much should I be paying them? What are the local benefits and policies? What do I need to know about local contracts, et cetera, et cetera? There's a whole amount of work that gets done upfront. So we run here a real-time market intelligence engine that has access to talent data from around the world. You can compare availability numbers, you can compare compensation. We also give you a fair amount of guidance on what the compliance and regulatory requirements are for you to build a team, depending on which part of the world you're looking at. So that's the first part. Once you've decided where you want to be, the next challenge really is, okay, great, now I need to find talent. I need to find people who I can hire and who will do incredible work for me. The most important part here is attracting that talent in the first place. You're a brand that they don't know, they don't care about. And
Right.
as much as you might try and sell them the opportunity, you also need to make sure you're seen and heard in the right places. So here, what we do is we do a lot of work with companies on employer branding, in simplifying their messaging, making it relevant for local markets. And then we will essentially help them with automated sourcing, which means we take that opportunity or that job and then splash it around every channel that we think your prospective hire could be in. This of course includes our proprietary talent pool of 1 million, but also across job boards and LinkedIn and aggregators and developer communities. Today we integrate all over, and once that's done, you see a flood of applications coming in.
Okay.
So I'll give you an example. If you're a company like Airbnb, or if you're a company like Uber, or if you're a company like Kareem, for example, every application that you put out on a platform like LinkedIn will get you 400 to 500 applications, right? It is humanly impossible for one person to sort through every 500 and say, okay, out of these 500, who are the 10 most relevant people for me? It's just impossible. And this is where a lot of the recruiting process breaks. Companies tend to either have large recruiting teams who are just doing this, screening work, or what people do is choose the first 50 and then leave out 400 on the table and miss out a lot on that good quality, right? And so our solution here was, this has to be done in a smart way, in a manner that's efficient and that is extremely accurate. So we developed our own data science powered recommendation engine. This is continuously evolving. So, there's a strong amount of AI in it. And what it does is it analyzes applications based on a bunch of factors to say, okay, great, this person is a good fit, this person is not a good fit, right? So we make some recommendations there. And then of course you've got the entire process management. How many rounds of interviews, who sets up the interview, sends Zoom link, collects the feedback, right? All of this happens through our tool. It's completely automated. And then at the end of it, once you've made your hire, you need to decide, well, now I need to hire this person. So what should I do with contract? What are the laws of the land? Once I bring that person on, how do I pay them on an ongoing basis? How do I give them, insurance? How do I send them a laptop? How do I give them a workspace? So all of this happens through our network of partners, right? It's all in one tool, which means you never have to look outside. You can just simply process the end-to-end, life cycle through the tool, and it basically will provision everything that you need.
So you're really taking this whole journey of hiring and working in each part of it, from A to Z.
Yeah, exactly. And it's not just about, we feel that it's not just about hiring. I think today the big opportunities in helping companies understand how to make this productive. What you need to do is not just hire employees. You need to make them feel like they're part of your team. You need to get them to believe in the vision. You need to get them to bring their best self to work and feel that, for the next 10 years or 5 years, they're committed to that vision. So there's a lot that happens post-hire on integration, on productivity, on retention. So we do a lot of that as well. We've recently just acquired a company that does, the downstream, so post-hire, right? So all of that is also now being mapped onto the tools. So there's a lot going on. It's quite exciting. And, our goal is, at the end of the day, can we become the operating system for global work? That's where we want to get to.
Okay. So basically, a question here, it's basically still a private marketplace in a way. Like talents reach out with a job post, you send this job post to the million talents you have, you find the right talents and you recommend these talents to the companies. The companies then decide to speak with 5 or 6 of these talents. They've scheduled interviews, they do the interviews through Zoom. After, if they want to hire, then on the platform they could go ahead and find how can they hire them. You have third-party companies that you're dealing with in terms of legalities, insurance, and all that, and that all happens through your platform.
all happens through the
Yes.
platform, and we can do this across 65 countries today. So you want to build
Wow.
a team simultaneously in Colombia and in India and in Mexico, we let you do it. And the idea really is, give people simplicity of use. And most importantly, we've been doing this now in a manner where we know everything that you need to know at each stage. So give people access to a playbook, across the entire life cycle.
Okay. How do you make sure you're finding the right talent or the qualified talent? How are you vetting the talent you're working with?
Yeah, that's a great question. That is the holy grail here. How do you get to a point where your recommendations are so accurate that people can just make a 1:1 hire? In reality, what you're trying to do is trying to make a best fit guess. And when I say guess, it's because you're using your sense of judgment to understand whether someone is a good fit for a particular company. So we do a couple of things. We have 3 levels of screening or vetting. The first one is we have an entire sort of screening questionnaire or screening step as part of the application process. It's a simple yes, no, sort of questionnaire which answers basic sort of requisites of a job, and that filters out a large number of people. Post that, what we do is we'll put the candidate through either a third-party assessment, some sort of a coding platform, or we have our own network of interviewers. And candidates can choose to go through this step, and then they can be verified, almost like the blue tick that you get on Twitter. We're not charging $8 a month for it, although now we could, given that that's the new model. But you could go through that and get like your verified tick. And then the final step is really being verified by the AI, right? And that's making essentially a prediction on whether someone's a good fit. So today, through our entire engine, we will filter out about 90% of inbound applications, and we're about 85% accurate. What that means is our automated engine 85% of the times makes the right approve or reject decision. There are times that we're still getting it right with certain skills, and use of certain keywords maybe throws us off. So it's a continuously evolving technology, but it's very, very useful when you're working at scale. I mean, the accuracy aside, I think we're adding tremendous amounts of value to our customers, reducing the time to process, reducing the number of interviews, reducing the overall cost of hiring, and ultimately allowing companies to hire much faster, right? That's the end result that we get.
Okay. Are you just the talent is it just developers and coders, or do you have could be business development, graphic designers, or are you just focusing on developers?
Well, so it could be talent of any function. We focus a lot on technology and innovation today because that's where a lot of the market needs are. But we've done teams around customer success and customer support. We've done teams around sales and marketing. We've done teams around digital and analytics. So we've done a whole bunch of non-tech roles. Although I'll say the biggest demand today globally is for technology and engineering.
Okay, I want to speak about the future of work. We now have Web3, which is the future of the internet, and the metaverse. How do the future of work, hiring talent, integrate with Web3?
I think this centralized theme between Web3 and the future of work is just decentralization. You don't need to be anchored to a particular location or work out of a particular office today to be successful. And that decentralization means that there is a growing need for an infrastructure that can support tools and services that can be offered to anyone, anywhere, whether that's things like global payroll, or it's things like global talent support and enablement like we do, or it's, accessing just commonly based community, based on where you are, right? So if I'm a digital nomad, so as to speak, working in Dubai or in Bali, can I access other professionals like me and, and do a whole bunch of things in a very sort of collaborative manner together, right? So I think there's a lot of potential. Obviously, it's very early days. As far as Web3 and the future of work goes, I don't know if there's any direct correlation apart from what I just mentioned, in the sense that there is a common theme of decentralization. But interestingly, a lot of new age companies today are being built leveraging this concept of decentralized workforce. And what that means is companies that are being built today in Boston have teams in, sitting in Bangalore and in Budapest at the same time. You no longer have to be in one office. And that's giving a lot of businesses the power of agility and speed. They can start tomorrow, they can build quick, they are faster than their predecessors, and they have access to the best talent in the world, right? And that speed and agility is really, really, critical when you're working in a highly dynamic and competitive space.
Okay. I want to challenge you over here for a little bit. You speak about you're a startup that's hiring, that's in talent. You speak about the future of work. We're seeing massive layoffs from tech companies, whether it's Facebook, Twitter, Google, Microsoft. We're seeing 15% layoff. Uh, how does this affect you as a talent hiring company?
It's a great question. And I'll be honest, we're not immune to what's happening around the world. We see some of our companies hit very badly by the economic downturn, and it impacts their workforce planning and it impacts their growth plans. And as a result, it impacts us. Absolutely. But I'll give you a flip side of this scenario. What the pandemic and what this economic slowdown is doing is it's forcing a lot of companies now to accelerate their path towards digital transformation. Okay. If you were an airline or a hospitality company sitting with tens and thousands of employees during the pandemic, you know that one event like this can single-handedly kill your business. Right. Or if you were a retail chain that had a huge dependence on in-store commerce, you know that an event like this can kill your business. And what this has done is it's made a lot of businesses and old school, or let's say old world enterprises, realize that we live in a very different world. So while you're seeing a lot of startups and product companies laying off people, that's absolutely true. On the flip side, we're seeing a lot of large enterprises now doubling down on technology, innovation, and growth because they realize this is the only way to protect themselves or to future-proof themselves against an event like this happening again. So if you look at industries like aviation, if you look at industries like financial services, for example, banks, if you look at retailers, these industries are moving 100 miles an hour to try and digitize. Amongst the customers that we've signed on recently, the size and scale that we're seeing is unprecedented. We're setting up a 3,000 member team for, one of the largest global retailers. We're setting up a 2,000 member team for a very large global bank. We're setting up another 5,000 potential member team for a very large global logistics player, right? So there's a lot going on. And I think we're seeing that global enterprises now need to accelerate. And interestingly, like they say, every downturn or every recession is an opportunity to build something great. And that's always historically happened. And that's essentially what we're banking on, right? We're banking on the fact that, sure, there'll be layoffs and companies will struggle, and companies will slow down. But on the flip side, you'll also see companies being very opportunistic and saying, this is a fantastic time to be in the market because there's so much talent available. Okay. So that's where we are fairly bullish and optimistic about the world.
Okay. What I realized during this interview is I could go for another 2 hours just sitting and chatting with you. You have amazing stuff going on, and like even more details. It's just amazing. I really want to say that.
Thank you.
I mean, as they say, chapeau buff for everything you're doing. Last question, and it's kind of a fun question. You've built Beyond Travel, you've built Talent 500, you've built Pillar. Is it Pillar?
Parallel. Yeah.
Parallel. You've built all these three. What are some ideas that are still in your mind that you'd be like, okay, if I had the time, I would go and build this idea or this idea?
Man, my whole life is full of ideas that could be and will be at some point. In 2000, I remember in 2010 or 2011, I built a dating app called Disco, and this is before the dating app craze took over. And we built this app where you give thumbs up and thumbs down, and then we realize it's a terrible idea and no one's going to use it, and then 6 months later dating apps took over the world. Or we built parallel and shut it down way before what became the metaverse craze. So I always believe, I mean, I have a whole book of ideas, and at some point I'm sure that there will be tremendous value in just putting these ideas out there and saying whoever wants to do it, not from a money making standpoint, but just from the thrill of seeing something come alive.
Yes.
I'm genuinely, it's a crazy idea, but I'm genuinely curious and interested in this whole idea of space exploration. I don't know, that's something that really interests me. So maybe that's something that at some point far off in the future is an idea to pick up next. But I also feel with what we started to do at Beyond, with community travel and kind of trying to play on this notion of bringing people with interests and passions and giving them space to do something together. I think that concept, is still relatively underserved, and I think will have a lot of potential. So
Vikram, I want to say thank you so much for being here. Thank you for sharing this amazing knowledge with me and with the audience that's going to watch this later on. You're working on great stuff, whether it's Beyond Travel, whether it's Talent 500. Thank you again for all the great work you're doing. Are you hiring? Where could people follow more of what you're doing? Feel free to put any plugins.
Yeah, absolutely. We're always hiring. I can be reached on Vikram at talent500.co, or it's Vikram Ahuja, AHUJA 27 on Twitter. And we're always talking about some of the work that we do. So please definitely come share your thoughts. And thank you for having me on this really interesting conversation. I loved talking about, my experiences and learnings. Hopefully it was useful. And I look forward to seeing you soon.
Thank you very much.